Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for coming on this beautiful day in Miami, our first in a long time. I also want to thank anyone that clicked if you're viewing us online. My name is Becky. I do all the kids' programming here, and I buy all the books. If you are here with us and you have a cell phone, please turn it off, put it on silent, do whatever you have to do. I'm sure your ringtone is awesome, but we don't need to hear it today. If you are online and you would like a signed copy, you can call the number below and we can get a signed copy for you. There's free shipping within the hour, so call now. I am honored to introduce today's author. He has been a soldier, a teacher, a traveler, and a writer. How many of you have read his books for school? Fantastic. He's written over 30 books for readers. Has anyone read all 34 he's written? 40. Has anyone read all 40 he's written? No. Well, you can buy them all today. He's also, most of them. He's won numerous awards, including the Edgar Allan Poe Award, the Newbery Award, the Scott Odell Award, and he was a National Book Award finalist. Before I bring him up, I would like to share a poem he wrote with you that I love, so everyone listen carefully. It's called 20 Minutes a Day. Parents, it's for you. Read to your children 20 minutes a day. You have the time, and so do they. Read while the laundry is in the machine. Read while the dinner cooks. Tuck a child in the crook of your arm and read for the library books. And reach for the library books. Hide the remote, let the computer games cool, for one day your children will be off to school. Remedial, gifted, you have the choice. Let them hear their first tales in the sound of your voice. Read in the morning, read over noon, read by the light of good night moon. Turn the pages together, sitting close as you'll fit, till a small voice beside you says, "Hey, don't quit." Richard Peck, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. I thought you'd all be at the beach. How nice to see you here. I come to you from London, New York, Washington, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Because it isn't enough to write your book. You have to get out and tell people about it, because my readers don't read reviews. And so you need 3 lifetimes. One at home at the desk, listening to voices, because writing is the craft of trying to get your brain to bleed directly onto a blank page in an empty room. Then you need another whole life to go everywhere and tell people about it, like today. Then you need a 3rd life. Guess what it is? I can wait. I was a teacher. You need another whole life, and what would it be for as a writer? Guess. Don't make me call on the grown-up. Guess what it is? You have to go get ideas for the next book. Because a story is always about something that never happened to the writer. Beatrix Potter was never a rabbit. J.K. Rowling did not attend Hogwarts School. She made it up from all the schools she'd visited and gone to. And so, where do we get our ideas? Wherever we can. In bookstores, because you have to know what else is being published and who did it. You need help from your friends, and they are the people who have already written published books. And then you're always watching for the next story. For example, so I'm creeping up on my new one. Here's where this came from. My sister said to me, "I would like to see the dress." And I said, "What dress?" She said, "I'd like to see the dress Kate Middleton wore when she married Prince William and became the Duchess of Cambridge." I said, "Where is that dress?" She said, it's on display in the throne room of Buckingham Palace in London. And I said, okay, I'll take you. Don't you wish you had a brother who would take you to London any time you asked? And so we went. Of course, I am always looking for new settings. I'm a writer because of something that happened every month of my childhood. Maybe it happened to somebody else in this room. From distant Washington, D.C., a magazine came every month called The National Geographic. And when you opened it, a map fell out, beckoning from the world. And so I wanted it out in that world and to write stories about it then. And my favorite setting in London is a place called the Royal Muse. It's tucked behind Buckingham Palace, and it's where the royal steeds are stabled, and where the coronation coach has waited more than 60 years for its next moment in the sun, and where the royal limousines are garaged. My sister and I were in the Royal Muse, and it smells just right. It smells like liniment and brasso and horse, and just right. And the story has to smell right, too. While we were waiting to go into the palace, I looked down, and a mouse ran over my shoe. And I thought, he lives here. He's never lived anywhere else. He is a mouse of the Royal Muse. I wonder what his story is. That's his story, because that's how we write. The world hands us a beginning, and we have to find the ending. So, I'm a teacher because, I'm a writer, because I never had a teacher who said, express yourself. Boys don't like to express themselves anyway, as you know, and I wouldn't have. So if you have a teacher who says, write what you know, just put your own experience down on the page, say, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to go looking somewhere else for your stories. If I'd been limited to writing what I know, I would have produced in all these 40 years one unpublishable haiku. But as it is, I'm always on the search for a new book. This book goes with this book, but it isn't a sequel. This is called Secrets at Sea, and this is called The Mouse with the Question Mark Tail. And since no reviewer has noticed it, I will tell you that both of these stories end on the same day in history, in the same building, one room apart. But they're not. One is not a sequel to the other, and they're different characters. I have, in all my 40-some years as a writer, I have never written in the voice of a mouse or any other animal. But you keep trying new things to keep yourself fresh. And how do I write these books? I will tell you. I don't outline because I don't know what's going to happen until it's written. And you can't know until your characters tell you. And if your characters aren't telling you the story, you have to get rid of them and get new characters. I wrote my first novel long, long ago 3 times before I could find the right person in the story to tell it. So I'm used to starting over. I write on an electric typewriter because I never lost a young reader to an electric typewriter. And besides, it needs to be a page right from the beginning. Page 1, chapter 1, I start writing. And then I think of changes, and I rewrite them on the page. They say it's easy to revise on the computer, on the word processor. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to hurt. And when I get the page, when I retype the page, then I find 3 more things to change. Then when I get the page exactly the way I want it, I take out 20 words. You can get 20 words out of the tightest page you ever wrote, and should. So I back and forth, and things happen I didn't foresee. And a year passes, and I've come to the end. It takes a year to write a book. I'd write it faster if I could, but I can't. And once I've found out how it ends, I take the first chapter, and without rereading it, I throw it away. Then I write the first chapter that really goes with this book, now that we know how it ends. Because the first chapter is the last chapter in disguise. And I don't know what all the clues are when I start writing. But once I've finished, I know what all the clues are. So I go back and slip them in. You learn that by reading the works of a lady named Dame Agatha Christie. She puts all her clues on the first 3 pages. You just didn't notice them. So that's what I do, times 42. I had never written a book in the voice of a mouse, so that was one more stage I had to go through. But the most important part of your writing is, can you guess? The most important words you write in your story, can you guess? They are the opening lines of the first page. Because if my readers don't like the first line, they'll never see the second. So I often have to write my first line 50, 60 times. It's never right the first time. Except for one book I did once write called The Teacher's Funeral, which is the only novel I ever wrote just to go with an opening line, but it doesn't usually work that way. I found the opening line of this brand new book, The Mouse with the Question Mark Tail, on page 124 of the 5th version. But the minute I saw that, I knew it was the opening line, and so I put it back on the front page and had to rewrite the first part of the book. And here is the opening line. Remember, all the clues have to be on the first page. Every time a human walks out of a room, something with more feet walks in. Mice, of course, who are only a whisker away, and everywhere you fail to look. It's true of the room where you're sitting. It's truer still of Buckingham Palace. How busy the scampering world of mice within the palace walls, and beneath the clattering cobblestones of the Royal Muse. How busy these royal places always are, where you can see and where you're not allowed. And never busier than that long ago June day, when Queen Victoria celebrated her Diamond Jubilee, 60 years upon the throne. Remember that great day when all the horses of the Royal Muse stamped across London in the proud Jubilee parade, and the mice of Buckingham Palace swept out of the walls in a great grey tide that flowed across marble floors. Remember that day, because it bears upon the story of my life. The great day was Queen Victoria's 60th Jubilee celebration, 60 years on the throne in 1897. And I was writing it 115 years later when Queen Victoria's great-great-granddaughter was celebrating her 60th. Because a novel is how history repeats in every human heart. I can't get off the subject of opening lines, because these days I'm looking for the next one. And my search in writing is for the next opening line. I've written a book called The Teacher's Funeral, and I'll tell you where it came from. I was invited to a college in Grand Rapids. Does anybody know that college? And they do what every college should do. They call in a group of 5th graders and a group of 7th graders from their area, and they bring them onto the college campus for a day of writing, and they bring an author in to meet them. The college is called Calvin College. And if you're going to a place called Calvin College, you don't expect to have a good time. And I didn't, but I got a novel out of it. They said, you will have the fifth graders in the morning for 45 minutes, teach them how to write. And the seventh graders in the afternoon. Well, I thought, 45 minutes is like a class period. I can only teach one idea. So I thought I would teach them the most important idea. I said, and that is getting the opening line just right. I pictured the fifth graders and me sitting around a table writing good opening lines. There were 500 of them. In stadium seating. And there at the top, their teachers who had already asked if they had to stay for the program. But I only had one lesson. So there I was, heavily mic'd on the stage, saying, you are only as good as your opening line. And I said, your readers are your teachers. So think up a line that would interest them, and you'll get a good grade. I said, what interests a teacher? There were 500 silences. I was dying up there. What interests a teacher? I said. And finally, one voice said, coffee. Oh, it was the longest morning of my life. And then here came the seventh graders that afternoon. 500 seventh graders. And the idea of entertaining a teacher brought out some naked hostility. These people are here, paid to be here. There was much throwing of hair among the girls. But I had to do it. I said, what interests a teacher? What could you put in the first line that interests a teacher? And finally a boy with a breaking voice said, trouble. I said, yes, trouble. Put trouble in the opening line. Everybody else's opening line will be boring, but put trouble in yours, and you'll be rewarded. Well, I don't know if they believed me. I believed me. And I had written an opening line that didn't have a novel to go with it, that I was going to share with them if we got to sit around a table. And I share it with you now. It won a prize, just the opening line. If your teacher has to die, August isn't a bad time of year for it. That's the first standing ovation I ever got from fifth graders. But then I had to write a novel. The teacher dies, and of course it's a one-room schoolhouse, and there are no subs, so who's going to teach? Read the book and find out. So, we are only as good as our opening lines, and I have so far come up with 42 of them. My life is a quest for the next one. You work hard on your opening lines because in 42 books, this is my most beautiful book with the best art. And the art on this one last year won a prize. The artist is Kelly Murphy, and it's wonderful when you have covers that work for you and not against you. I have a lot that work against me. So you work harder on your opening line because you've lost half your readers at the bookstore who didn't like the cover. For example, a book that changed my life is called A Year Down Yonder. It is a story of Chicago brother and sister who have to go spend a week every summer with their grandma in a little unnamed town. And they are not looking forward to it. But when they get to the town, they learn that their grandmother is the largest human being in the town, wears aprons the size of Alaska, and dresses from Lane Bryant, is heavily armed and trigger-happy. And she changed my life because that happened. And that's the Newbery Silver Medal. And when your book wins the Newbery Silver Medal, what do you think your editor says to you?
When's your next book?
We'll need a sequel, and we'd like it by Thursday. Yes. They made a mistake and gave me the cover I wanted on this book. the boy's named Joey, and he dreams of flying. And he thinks if he doesn't get to go up in a plane at the county fair that year, 1933 or 4, he'll never be able to fly. What he doesn't know is I'm arranging for World War II to come along so he can go to flight school and be a pilot. So they said, what do you want on the cover? And I said, I want the high moment, Joey flying. And I got it. Look, they made a mistake. They gave me what I wanted. And then here came the sequel. A sequel has to be better than the first book because the reviewers are very critical of sequels. And I had a big problem. You always make a problem, have a problem in a book you can't fix. And here, I had let Joey grow up. I arranged for World War II. I sent him to flight school. He flew away from me. It's like parenting. You give them everything, and then they leave you. And so he was too old to tell the story. And Grandma can't tell the story because she's 68 and doesn't tell you her business anyway. So he had a little sister named Mary Alice. And I asked her to come and see me. You can do that if you've created characters. They'll come and see you. And she said, what do you want? And I said, I've got to do a sequel, and you're all I've got left. Do you want to be in it? And she said, maybe I do, and maybe I don't. I'm sick to death of being a little kid. Make me 15. So then the year was 1937, and I had to go back to the library and make a timeline from Time magazine for that year, so I could live in 1937 with her. History books are no good. They're written later by people who know what's going to happen. Time magazine doesn't know. When Amelia Earhart vanishes without a trace, Time magazine is interested too. So, to make it better, I caused Mary Alice to go live with Grandma in that town, go to school in that town, go through all the seasons and holidays of the year, and it made a better book. And they said, what do you want on the cover? And I said, I will tell you. I want the December scene in which Grandma sets traps, trapping furs, because that's her winter cash crop. Mink and muskrat and raccoon and whoever they are, she's out there. And it's perfect for Grandma because it's another reason for her to be armed. And there's the cover we worked on for 2 weeks. Mary Alice and Grandma out running their traps on a blue and white winter's night. And Mary Alice says Grandma is wearing every stitch of clothes Grandpa ever owned. She doesn't know what she buried him in. Do you like this cover? Say yes. There's the cover. I raced to the publisher and said, who wrote this? Whose book is this? And they said, we showed this to the president of the company. We showed this to the president of the company. He said, isn't it a funny book? I said, yes. We don't do dark colors on funny books. Throw it out. Without speaking to me about it. They did this. Well, I invite you to notice that this train is not a 1937 Art Deco streamliner coming down from Chicago. It's a Tinker toy from 1901, indicating that the artist can neither read nor draw. And it's the opening scene of the book. You never put the opening scene on a book cover. There's nothing to read on for. This is the scene in which Mary Alice is coming to live with Grandma from distant Chicago. It won that. So I guess the art department said, well, we really put that one across. But guess what happened then? The English bought this book. And that means they would be putting their own cover on it with their own artists. Now I thought, what does London know about Central Illinois farm people and their setting? I'm worried. I had reason to be worried. I wondered what they would choose in the year of Mary Alice's year there. Christmas? Apparently not. I'm sorry to tell you, they chose the Valentine's Day scene. And this is the cover London put on it. Every disgusting shade of pink and satin and lace. I don't even want to touch it. And just in case a boy might be tempted to read this book, I don't think so. This book sold 300 copies throughout the British Empire and died. And then who do you suppose we heard from? The Italians. And I thought, what in the world are the Italians going to put on the cover? How do they see Grandma? Well, now the book is called Il Fucili di Nonna Dauda, the shotgun of Granny Dowdle. Are you ready for her in Rome? I wasn't. Oh my. Yeah. That's sort of what I said. Something is lost in translation here. And then one dark day, this story is drawing to a close now. One dark day, we heard from Beijing. And here is my fun granny in China. Now bear in mind, this is a comedy. Imagine what they would do to a tragedy. I think maybe this cover has more to do with their plans for us than for my girls. I thought my career was all over with this one. But no. These covers are a reminder that on the day they arrive, and they do, they come in boxes of books you can't read, but you wrote them. It's very important that that day you be writing another novel and getting on with your life. Because you can't tell a book by its cover. And the people who work in the art department live lots farther from my readers than I do. So it's one of those problems. But never, ever say to a writer, why did you let them put that cover on the book? Don't do that. Because we didn't let them. And so that's what I do. I have the best job in the world. You can tell I was once a teacher. And teaching is a job you never really quit. You just go on and on trying to turn a life into lesson plans. And now I call them novels, and I get to go everywhere, and I don't have to grade anybody. But you can't teach and write. Because when you're not teaching, you're thinking about teaching. And when you're not writing, you're thinking about writing. Neither one is a part-time job. So I had to quit teaching in order to write. So one day in the middle of my life, the dead center of my life, I quit my job and walked away. I handed in my pension plan and my tenure and my regular salary and my hospitalization, and I turned in my attendance book, which was, of course, my first work of fiction. And I went home to write or die. But that's the only way you can write, by the light of the bridges burning behind you. And that day, long, long ago, in 1971, brought me to this afternoon and this moment with you. Because now I get to go everywhere and meet everybody, because I have the best job in the world. Does anybody have a question?
Did you want to be a writer?
Oh, I'll tell you that. I wanted to be a writer before I could read, and there's only one reason for that. My mother read to me before I could read to myself. I had a mother who read to me as evening proceeded apace. Light the lamp and turn the page and be, oh, any place. Pirates there were, and palaces, and a raft at the river's bend. I warmed my face at the story's light, hoping it wouldn't end. I had a mother who read to me as the afternoon ebbed away, and stories stirred in the darkening wood. And that's why I'm here today. Today we're told there's no time to read to a child in the single-parent family, in the family where both parents work. No schedule for reading in the online family where people can text from the dinner table. No patience, we are told today, to read to the hyperactive child. I wanted to be hyperactive too, but Mother wouldn't let me. And so I'm a writer because most of who we are is determined before we ever see school. Oh, and I'm a writer because of a teacher. It's always a teacher. Always a teacher pushes you over the edge. And my teacher was named Mrs. Cole, and she taught 4th grade. And there were 42 of us in her class. I counted heads in the picture. I don't remember her ever raising her voice, but then she didn't have to. In those days, parents and teachers were on the same side. And one day, I didn't see her coming, and she stepped up behind me and handed me a book and said, "Here, you might try this." Notice she didn't say like this. Adults were much less interested in what children liked then, which made us want to be adults. But I loved that book the minute I saw it because it was falling apart and some of the pages were loose. Then as now, I despised anything new. And I thought maybe this will unlock the past for me. Oh, did it ever? I went home to read it. It's still on my desk today. It's the story about 2 boys on a raft down the river of no return, running through a world made wrong. What is it? It's Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I am a writer because I wanted to be Mark Twain the minute I laid eyes on him. And I will go on to the end trying to be. It won't work, but I'll die trying. I fell in love with long distance and language in that book. And I'm a writer because in 4th grade I could read a 19th century novel cover to cover. Not because I was gifted, but because my teacher feared no parent. So it takes all these things to make a writer out of you, and they all start so frighteningly early in life that it always seems a little miracle that it happened at all, especially since I never wrote a line of fiction until I was 37 years old. Have I stunned you all into silence? I believe we can tell. I was a teacher. I think I could tell as a teacher, an English teacher, of course, who had been read to and who had not been read to, even though I taught teenagers, not first graders. But I think when you're ahead at the beginning, you stay ahead. And so that's what we're doing, supporting Miami's best bookstore, even on the sunniest day of the year. Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for coming. Most of Richard's books are for sale at the register. If you're joining us online, you can call the phone number. We'll get you a signed copy. There is free shipping. Otherwise, Richard will be signing here. Let's give him one more round of applause.